Good evening, everyone. The time is now 7:30 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting of the Downers Grove Public Library Board of Trustees to order. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We acknowledge that the Downers Grove Public Library sits on the unceded, traditional, and ancestral homelands of Native peoples. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the indigenous peoples who have been caretakers of the land throughout generations, past and present. We invite you to learn more about the genocide and forced displacement by non-Native settlers and the ongoing injustices against Native peoples. Caitlin, can you proceed with roll call?
Trustee Doherty. Here. Trustee Humphries.
Here.
Trustee Cynthia.
Here.
Trustee Weaver.
Here.
Trustee Sladak. President Goodall.
Here. All right, on behalf of the trustees, I'd like to welcome all of you to our library board meeting and thank you for your interest in the library. All right, item number 4 is approval of minutes.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Let's proceed with roll call.
Trustee Doherty. Yes. Trustee Humphries.
Yes.
Trustee Cynthia.
Yes.
Trustee Weaver.
Abstain.
Trustee Sladak. Yes. President Goodall.
Yes. All right, item number 5 is financial matters, the first being December 2022 year-end financial report. Sorry.
All right, so you've got your December 2022 financials, and that is coming in all one report this year. That does include all the January invoices that were charged to FY22. Usually, we get those December financials in January, in the January board packet, and then in February, there is an update that reflects year end. But because of our issues with Munis and the January board packet, you get it all at once this time. So this is our year-end FY 2022. You can see that our revenues collected came in at 104.92%, mainly due to higher than expected personal property replacement tax. And we ended FY 2022 at 93.3% of the library capital replacement fund budget expended and 98.02% of the operating fund expended. So we did really well on both of those.
And as the charges for services, that 420%.
Yes.
Yes, we'll hand that off to Caitlin.
Yes, I was anticipating that one. So that is our charges for services line. That's printing, photocopies, which are the substantial portion of that. But then that's also the miscellaneous line that the village asks us to use for any refunds that come in or odd revenue that doesn't fit into any of our other categories. So some of the things that are in that account or in that line were the foundation's payment for or reimbursement for the social work intern stipend. We received a $20,000 gray bar refund early in 2022. There was that was what was left over in our contingency.
Yes, that was one of the final, I believe, last electrical project putting us to LEDs.
Okay.
And we had contingency and we also got some rebates on the actual materials, so it did come in well under.
So we do get other various vendor refunds. We had a fee for one of the FOIAs that we produced, and so that payment went into there. So it really is kind of an assortment of things, but
Okay.
it looks exponentially higher because
Right.
of like the $20,000 refund especially.
Yeah. Okay.
Ready to move on to the January financials?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
So for January, this is when you start to see those fund balances to dip down. Remember that we do have the intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Downers Grove that they cover any operating expenditures. If we go into the red, they cover it for us, no problem. That IGA has been in place for a number of years now because that discrepancy is actually due to the village's change in our fiscal year. The library's fiscal year used to run May 1st to April 30th, as did the village's. And a number of years ago, the village changed that to put us onto the calendar year. The issue is that we are primarily property tax funded. About 96% of the library's revenue comes from property taxes. So we get all of our money in June and September. So that May 1st fiscal year for the library was done to bring us in line with our actual revenues. So when the village changed it, they also made it so that we were going to be a little bit behind in our revenues every year. And so they did the IGA with us to cover that because their operating reserves are large enough that this is not any sort of issue for them. So we are very grateful that they did that IGA for us. So the 0.7% revenue collected in January is about as expected. For those financials, January puts us 8.3% through the year. And you can see that our expenditures are at 6.7% in the operating fund. And that includes the fact that we have already paid our annual insurance premiums as you approved in January. That brings that line 5420 to 78.7% spent. And that happens every year because those premiums are due in January. So that always kind of throws us off. And then our library capital replacement fund is also at 0.7% for expenditures in January, but you will see that there are a number of large invoices for approval for the library capital replacement fund tonight that are for that workroom renovation. Does anyone have any more questions?
We have a motion to approve the financials as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve financials as presented. Caitlin, can you proceed with roll call?
Trustee Doherty? Yes. Trustee Humphries?
Yes.
Trustee Cynthia?
Yes.
Trustee Newbert?
Aye.
Trustee Slater? Yes. President Gagnon?
Yes. Item number 6 is public comment on agenda items. Is there any comments for items that are presented on tonight's agenda? Item number 7 is public comment on other library business. Do you have any comments tonight?
No one else, I would step up. Hi,
Welcome.
good evening. My name's Eileen Briner. I'm the Downers Grove resident. Yesterday, I received an email from the Downers Grove Library. I guess all card holders received it also. It's titled, "To the Downers Grove Community, a message about continued violence, coping, and mental health." It's an opinion piece coming from the library. It's clearly propaganda. The piece is unsigned. I want to know who wrote it. Who's authorized to speak for the library? Did the Board of Trustees approve this message? The library has no authority to be disseminating opinion pieces. There's a reply button, but replies are not public. I have to FOIA the replies in order to see them. The replies should be as public as the subject piece. I want the board to address this immediately. If the board did not approve this message, a message recanting it needs to be sent. If the board did approve it, a public reply system needs to be in place that's open for all to view and reply. If the board did approve this piece, I'd like further review and discussion of the information presented. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Frank Cody. I live in Downers. I'm a member of EQDG. Coincidentally, I also wanted to mention this letter about continued violence and coping. Every day, I'm heartbroken reading the news of the day's mass shooting or the latest attempt of right-wing politicians to torment and persecute minorities. Lately, the LGBTQ community seems to have fallen into their crosshairs. But they're not alone in this, as every minority has been attacked in one way or another. And as you stated, we are all impacted by this. We all have a responsibility to work to create a more just and inclusive place for everyone to exist. I'm thanking you for your courage in sending out this letter at this politically charged time.
Good evening, my name is Laura Boyce. I too received the message. Why has the Downers Grove Public Library again issued a message to the Downers Grove community about tragic events in our nation and around the world that did not happen here in Downers Grove? Downers Grove Public Library has a responsibility to serve this community in a neutral manner without issuing biased opinion editorials about violence, aggression, and hate that have nothing to do with us. The residents of Downers Grove wish to live here in peace without being forced to hear the Downers Grove Public Library's views about the violence, unfortunately, committed against immigrant farm workers in Half Moon Bay, Asian Americans in Monterey Park, and anti-Semitic attacks in Bloomfield, New Jersey. The library is a public facility which must not be used as your political sounding board. We respectfully but firmly decline your invitation to join you in exploring ways in which these events can have an effect on our relationships with each other, ourselves, and society. We do not share your views. We believe in God. We believe abortion is wrong. We value life. Let us read our own news about world events and be free to interpret them based upon our own values and beliefs. Do your job. You work for us. We don't come into this library to impose our opinions on you. We have not categorized you as oppressed, oppressor, marginalized, so don't do that to us. It's not your place to tell us it's okay not to be okay. It's not okay for you to provide us with a list of materials depicting violence and death. Who wrote the February 21st message? Who authorized Downers Grove Public Library to publish it on the website? You have a statutory duty to act for the benefit of the community. Again, the Library Act calls for you to use the library for residents and taxpayers for the benefit of the greatest number of residents and taxpayers. That means all of us. It does not say the library can be used to give preference to certain groups of people. We have not asked you to fight on our behalf against systemic inequities we do not believe exist. Your awful equity consultant, RGW, attacks American history, tradition, meritocracy, and rejects equal rights under the law. RGW says our library must be DEI-centered, not neutral. Maybe you think it's okay to promote civil discourse and inclusiveness. We disagree. The library's bylaws require you to avoid situations in which your personal interests might be served and to disqualify yourself whenever the appearance of conflict of interest exists. You, as board members, hold positions of public trust. You're expected by your bylaws to conduct yourselves according to the highest ethical standards and maintain truth, integrity, and honor. You have violated Illinois law, your own bylaws, and your duty of public trust. To correct this, we ask you to withdraw the inappropriate, politically motivated message from Downers Grove Public Library's website. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Zoe Ray. I live in Downers Grove. I guess unknowingly thought that I would be the only one to bring up this email. I was so happy when I saw this email empathetically addressing things, all the trauma and challenges we're facing as a nation and as a community. I have friends and family throughout the United States, and these things affect all of us here in this community, and they affect us as a whole. And not only was I grateful for the letter, I thought it was awesome and effective that you added, and of course you would because you're a library, a list of resources, which this is why I was 5 minutes late. I was picking up a book off of that list, Compassionate Conversations, and I looked forward to, I noticed there were other books I was interested in, but other people had already checked them out. So I looked forward to reading those when people return them or getting them through the SWAN system. So not only are you putting out this statement, you're backing it up with your actions, and you're helping us all cope and grow, and I and other people appreciate it so much. And also, I got really excited about the March Madness brackets, and I have other books in there that I'm exploring that I have never heard of, and books that I never would have found. So I so appreciate all the resources and lists that everyone in this library worked so hard to put together. And just keep doing this amazing work. It's much appreciated, and it's working. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Warner Kienke, and I'm a resident of Downers Grove. And I just wanted to start by saying that I was extremely proud to receive your email as a public statement. It needed to be said, especially when there are issues of anti-Semitism, racism, and so forth that are abounding all over the place in our society and culture. I think it's really unique in a positive way that this library is at the foreground of a lot of cultural discussions. This is a place where we can bring that forward like we are doing tonight. I would love to see more books on the shelves regarding African American history, history of Native Americans, history of non-European peoples, and I would love to see discussions of that. Several months ago, there was to be a discussion on racial healing. That discussion was canceled by the police department because of threats of violence, which is what this memo and email indicated. We should have a discourse, and we need to learn from both sides and understand one another. Therefore, I would love to see us get involved in some of the discussions like racial healing. Because coming from Germany, where you had anti-Semitism, and to come to this country where you had Jim Crow, there isn't much difference. And therefore, I have spent my entire life fighting against that. I am pleased that the library is taking a stance, and I thank you as a board for bringing that about. And I am proud to just be here and say this is a fabulous place. Thank you.
My name is Julie Brethauer. I'm a Downers Grove resident for approximately 32 years, and I also wanted to thank you for your statement. I think if certain members of the community don't feel that the problems that were addressed are happening here, I don't think they're fully aware that if because they haven't happened here, they couldn't happen here. And I applaud you for bringing awareness and making the library another channel to be a teachable moment in our community and open our eyes and our hearts to others and others in our community who don't live the same life that we do and just bring awareness. So I thank you and speak in support of your statement. Thank you.
My name's John Thornton. I've been a patron of this library since sometime in the 70s. I've played Dungeons and Dragons here. I've attended concerts here. I've done so many things here. Throughout all of that time, this library has been a great place, a free public space where people can come without any expectation of spending money, of buying something. People can come in here and they can just exist, and it's wonderful. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Joshua Prince Ramus, the architect who designed the Seattle Public Library, but he gives a wonderful presentation where he talks about what libraries are and what a massive anchor they are to an entire community. You guys are doing an amazing job. The email that you sent out yesterday that I received as well was wonderful. It was delightful. I mean, it was heartbreaking, but everything about it was perfect. Thank you so much for continuing to do the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for being brave and staying on the front lines, because I know about all of the threats that you've received, and it's terrible. We are here for you. We are here to support you. We support the library. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Robert Shylock. I've been a resident of Downers Grove for more than 30 years. I have a prepared statement that I'll read. I hadn't planned on speaking to the email, but I am going to briefly just make a point. First of all, it was just an excellent statement. It was so beautifully written. Those who've spoken here tonight and said that that statement has no relevance in Downers Grove, frankly, are speaking from arrogance and dismissiveness. One of the most recent shootings happened in my hometown, and it's very painful for me. I lived in Downers Grove and had for more than 30 years, and that affected me. How dare anyone say that your statement didn't make me feel like the library cares about my feelings. It did. Now from what I wrote. I'm concerned about the ongoing and relentless attacks on our library, its staff, and certain of its patrons, especially people who are unhoused in the LGBTQ+ community. Our library staff is outstanding. They are professionals who are skilled at curating, collecting, documenting, research, literature, programming, helping patrons, critical thinking, and so much more. That is why several staff members have been recognized for their outstanding service by Library Journal. It is completely inappropriate to assail and malign them, making them feel besieged, threatened, and unsafe as they steadfastly work to serve us all. The library trustees are bound in good faith by American Library Association standards and the Downers Grove Public Library's bylaws to, quote, work to recognize and dismantle systemic and individual biases, to confront inequity and oppression, to enhance diversity and inclusion, and to advance racial and social justice, close quote, and, quote, to support to the fullest the efforts of librarians in resisting censorship of library materials by groups or individuals, close quote. Public libraries are among America's most democratic institutions. In fact, given the broad spectrum of programs and services we ask them to provide, they have in essence become the village square. As Andrew Carnegie, who many consider to be the father of American public libraries, said, quote, there is not such a cradle of democracy upon the earth as the free public library. A library outranks any other one thing a community can do to benefit its people. It is a never-failing spring in the desert. He recognized that the freedom to read is essential to our democracy. Individuals must be sufficiently knowledgeable to make informed decisions, and libraries must provide users with necessary information through a wide variety of tools from varying viewpoints. So for me, it begs the question, what motivates the individuals to spend the last 6 months engaging in disruptive, dangerous, and intimidating attacks on the Downers Grove Public Library? Many of them are affiliated with organizations that vilify others because of their race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Prejudices that strike at the heart of our freedoms and democratic values. They are part of a wave of groups that galvanize followers to attack members and allies of the LGBTQ+ community, advocate for book bans, and protest inclusive curriculum. As they choose one target after another for their vitriol, their choice of the library for these attacks leads me to believe that their real aim is to weaken freedom and democracy as represented by the library and threaten us via this public square that is the library. Inciting fear and panic does not fall under the protection of the First Amendment. These vile, hateful, and disruptive tactics to assault our library take a toll on library workers, library patrons, and the community members who are subjects of these attacks. I'm here to support the library director, the rest of the staff, the members of the Board of Trustees, and all library patrons. They do not deserve the stress and disruption of service resulting from the ongoing attacks that started last fall and have continued here tonight. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Sue Oliver Cook. I'm a Downers Grove resident, 11 years now. And I have found that I need to come and support you all. I'm a mom. I have 2 children, adult children that are part of the LGBTQI+ community. And what I've seen, the vitriol that I've seen, and the attacks on you all, I just wanted to come and support you. I appreciate the resources that you have available at your library. It's helped me be a better mom, a better ally, and a better advocate. So I thank you.
Good evening, my name is Bob Frank, 38-year resident of Downers Grove. This is my first library board meeting. I'm here because I was outraged and shocked at the email that was sent out yesterday. I don't see where it is the library's business to get into. My sentiments lie with the first speaker and the third speaker, getting into editorials. I did some online searching and purpose and responsibilities of the role of the board. The Board of Library Trustees serves the residents of the Village of Downers Grove with the responsibility to determine the purpose of the library in the community and to develop appropriate goals for services, to seek adequate funding and achieve the goals of the library, to adopt written policies to govern the operation of the library, to authorize plans of expenditure to allow implementation of the library service program, to be aware of issues in library services and legislation affecting libraries, to communicate actively with local government and the general public, and to employ a competent, qualified library administrator. I'm not connecting this dot with this dot. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments? All right. Thank you very much. Item number 8. That's right. That's right. We did have a request to have the Access Service Department presentation moved up to before our new business. Go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and make a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving the Access Service Department presentation up to after public comment, please say aye.
Aye.
Lucas McKeever is our Access Services Manager, and he is here in the front row to talk to you about the Access Services Department.
Yes, Thank you. As Julie mentioned, my name is Lucas McKeever, and I'm the Access Services Manager here at the library. If you're familiar with libraries, but maybe not with access services and a lot of other institutions, it's called technical services. But basically anything you see on the shelves throughout the library, anything that circulates, it comes in through us first, and we get it ready for circulation. So while we don't have a public desk that reads the public every day, we do work very closely with our colleagues throughout the library, and I like to think of us as an internal vendor. Basically, the different departments have selectors who choose the materials that we add to the collection, but then they send their carts to us, and what we do is we place the orders. And when we place them, part of the reason we're the ones that place it is we actually create the on-order records within our catalog when we do that, and that allows for our patrons to place holds long before we receive the materials, which both is great for convenience for patrons, but then it also allows for our selectors to monitor popularity of an item and then proactively select or order additional copies for things that are very popular before the street date. We also work on various projects throughout the library. So when our peers throughout the organization find that patron behaviors or the way they use materials is different than the way we have it set up, we work with them to try and make sure that patron use of the library is as seamless as possible and fits their needs. One example that we recently did is within the kids' room. They have a lot of picture book favorites collections or favorites categories, and so one of the things that they had is more granular sort of vehicle types, so trains, trucks, construction, and what they found is that a lot of those go out so quickly that it's hard to keep those areas filled, but then there are also vehicles that children are interested in, such as boats, that don't fit into those categories, and so they transition to a more umbrella term of things that go. So we worked with them to make sure that that project went through, and then so basically any sort of reformatting or reframing how we're marketing materials within our shelves and our space. We work with our peers to do that. We also are the people that get items when they've been loved a little too much, so maybe worse for the wear. So if any books their binding is breaking, their pages are missing, or covers are torn, they come to us and we do our best to repair them. That also includes audio discs that are skipping or DVDs, and so we try our best to give things a second life and get them back in the hands of our patrons, or work with the selectors to try and replace those if they can't be repaired. Finally, we do see things at the end of their life cycle. It's a natural thing within libraries that things they have a shelf life. And so as we withdraw things and remove them from the collection, we try to be very intentional with what we do with those materials and make sure that we do the best we can to give them a second opportunity to get into the hands of a community member here. So some of the ways that we do that include setting things aside for our Friends of the Library book sale. So the passive one that is in the cafe space, we manage the inventory on that daily, and then select the books for that. Their annual sale, we put those to the side as well. We work with our outreach folks, and so they have materials that are of high popularity, but maybe we ordered more copies because of that popularity, but as that starts to dwindle, we don't have the space to keep as many copies. We put those to the side so that they have good things to give to our community members at outreach events. The racks at the tracks, we take things and put them to the side for that. And then we also work with our school librarian in the kids' room who works with our teachers and our school libraries and make sure that while they don't necessarily have the budgets for their own classroom libraries or even their main libraries within the school, we still are able to give them some of the things that maybe don't fit here anymore, but for them it's a great amount of materials they couldn't afford. And so, yeah, I think a lot of what we do is really hand in hand with our colleagues, but then also is very much so affecting how patrons utilize the library. Any way that an item circulates, the behaviors, whether it goes out for 2 weeks, whether it goes out for 3, all of that is dictated by the way we put it into the catalog. And so one of the things I like to think is if you don't really know what access services is, it means we're doing a good job. That's all I have for that.
And Lucas is selling himself short. He is also the guru of those rules that control how everything in this library goes out. And so making sure that the item type, what it's called in the record, connects it to how long it should go out, and just all of these. There are literally hundreds of lines of code behind that catalog that Lucas is the one who looks at and goes, okay, here's where something is out of line, or here's where something needs to be updated. And they touch every single item that comes into this library and every single item that leaves our collection. So when he says things like changing trucks to things that go, that also means that not only did they touch every single one of those catalog records electronically, they touched every single physical item and put a new label on it to make sure that it gets back to where you can find it. So access services is really the backbone of the entire library, and without them, none of us would be able to find anything. So, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess building off of that, something I meant to say is we are a small but mighty unit. We only are 6 people, or 4.4 full-time equivalent. But just a snapshot of last year, we added over 27,000 items to the catalog, withdrew over 26,000, and repaired over 4,000. So we definitely were hard workers, and we do a lot with with the time we have.
And they are currently housed in the meeting room during our workroom renovation project. So it's their turn, and their workroom is being renovated, so we can't wait to get them back into their new space.
Thank you so much. All right. Now we'll be heading into new business. Item number 8.
Biblioteca Annual Service and Maintenance Agreement Renewal. Now this is the contract that is the maintenance and service agreement for the automated materials handler, our self-check units, and all of the software that controls those. The cost of a service call without a service agreement with this company is extremely high. One of the things that comes with the service agreement, not only is it all parts and labor for anything to keep the automated materials handler and the self-checks up and running, it also includes those 2 tune-ups a year, which are absolutely vital to keeping the automated materials handler, also known as the sorter, running smoothly. As you put your books, it also takes uses the induction points, which is where you return your materials, those little slots, and you can watch the automated materials handler work through the window into this circ room. So that is our robot that kids love to come and visit, and they like to watch it work. So this is the maintenance agreement that keeps it up and running. Now, we have one major change to the service agreement this year. A few years ago, we did add credit card swipes to all of the self-checks so that people could pay their fines and fees with a credit card at any self-check in the building. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and as you know, we eliminated overdue fines. And so that really reduced the amount of payments that we're taking in overall. As part of that, the number of transactions actually done at those self-check units via credit card had dropped dramatically. And so it's only 3 to 6 per month, only an average of about $100 a month. And the cost of the annual maintenance on those credit card swipes alone was $4,200. So we decided it was time to do away with that service, that the 3 to 6 folks per month who needed to pay by credit card, we would direct them to the checkout desk to handle those transactions. So we did save ourselves $4,200, which means that our renewal for this year is actually a decrease of about 7%. And we think that that was it was a change that's time had come.
Have you had any negative feedback on that at this point?
No. And we took them off as of February 1st.
Without that 4,200, knowing that a lot of vendors are increasing their prices right now, would there have been an increase?
Yes.
Otherwise, and
Yes.
what percentage, do you know offhand, kind of what that looked
I
like?
do not recall off the top of my head. It was, I want to say it was somewhere in the 3% vicinity.
How many service visits do we have last year?
Was it 2? In addition to the annual tune-ups, there was at least one major visit because we had a software issue that had to be taken care of. I want to say it was 2, but I can't remember specifically what the other one was.
How does that work out? If a technician visit is $675 plus $250 an hour, it takes a lot of visits to tally up to $36,000.
Well, that was just, this also does the software, and so it is the annual software updates and upkeep to all of the software. The cost of that, the parts are very costly for these machines. And it says $650, but it's thousands every time they walk in the door, plus that tune-up would be thousands every time they came to do that. Our machine is aging, and it is having more and more issues. We do also have, I was just thinking of the sorter itself, but we also have more frequent visits for self-check. And those happen. The self-checks get a lot of love, particularly the 2 that are here in the children's department. And so they also include those regular visits to keep those up and running. One of the most frequent things that happens is the printers on the self-check will go bad because they are just spitting out receipts all the time. And so the printers on the self-checks are one of those things that they're expensive and they're hard to find. And if we had to do them ourselves, they have them for us.
Am I correct in assuming that by the nature of, the specialized nature of this, if there's not a lot of competition, that you can
No.
go out for bids?
No, this is one of those where you have to use the manufacturer is the only one who does it.
But to clarify, you could go on a time and expense kind of a basis.
We could go on a time and expense basis, but we would still have to pay separately for the annual upgrades for the software.
I'm struggling
and
to
that's
evaluate the cost of the annual service without understanding a breakdown of what the incremental charges would be and how that compares.
Well, the software itself, we do pay for we have to pay for, if we were not to do a service agreement with them, we would have to pay for each individual self-check software annual expense anyway, because otherwise we would not, they don't work without the software. So.
We don't have to this.
Looks like there's one movement item for 1747, the library connect to like the last one.
Yes.
So it's 1,747 for a 1-year subscription to the library connect devices.
Yes, and the RFID workstations, that is the software that keeps each of those RFID workstations at our, the pads working. I'm sorry, if I had known you would have so many questions, I would have had our circulation services manager here to answer those, because she is the one who works specifically with this vendor and is the one who calls when they have.
It's like this term renews starting in May.
Yes.
Make a motion to table until we can get a comparison on the per item costs incurred last year versus the cost of the annual contract.
Well, and that will be a little difficult to do because they do not, for the service calls that we had, we do not have actual like invoices that say what it would have been had we done that outside of the service agreement. So it will take a little doing for us to come up with that for you. Jenny, can you take that note for me?
All right, we have a motion on the board to table the Biblioteca service agreement renewal till next month or until we receive clarified information. Do we have a second on that?
When did we, I seem to remember not too long ago when we moved to this model, right? Because it used to be that we were paying differently. Is it, I don't know, maybe this was not this time, but is it a different?
No, we've had the annual service and maintenance agreements since the sorter was purchased in 2014.
I do remember there was a year pre-COVID, I think, where there was a massive sorter
Yeah.
yeah, like
thinking.
ripples to the library return.
The
Yes.
alternatives, like
Was
either going
gonna
with
be-
this, like, okay,
yeah.
we'll pay the minimum to get the software, but then we'll take the risk of having the calls, but maybe that was the year that we were talking about that.
Yes, there have been some times that we have had some major failures that have been, because of the service agreement, have been made whole because we were able to get that addressed. Also, I will say that Biblioteca prioritizes their annual maintenance and service agreement customers when it comes to receiving service.
Yeah, I also remember at least one year, I'm trying to, memory is not as perfect as it used to be, but where the board let out a huge sigh of relief because we had the service agreement. And it also makes budgeting much easier because you don't have to budget a huge amount of money for something that won't likely happen, but you have to have the reserve funds available for it and so forth.
Like car insurance.
Yeah, very much so.
I understand the concern, and it's a
I
valid.
don't know if I'm concerned or not.
It's a valid
I have enough
concern.
data to know that whether I'm concerned or not.
But
Yes.
my experience here, I don't usually buy service agreements, but I remember being very happy we had this a couple of times in the past.
And the expected useful life of an automated materials handler is 10 to 12 years.
And ours is how?
This year, 9.
No,
Does it cover the cost of a replacement then?
It does not cover the cost of replacement. It covers the cost of keeping this one going, and eventually, they won't offer us an annual service and maintenance agreement. And that's how you know it's really at the end of its useful life, when they stop offering that. And they have started giving us you should be thinking about this.
What is the ticket price on this order? Like 100? Is it more than it?
There's some things we gotta not know.
Yes, yeah, we're probably looking at something in the range of $250,000 to $300,000. And so that is one of those things that is on that, our capital replacement, our capital needs replacement report. Assessment, whatever the heck we call that thing. That has all the things we need to do. This is the number one thing that happens right after that current one ends. This is the first thing on the next plan.
And it's not only the sorter, the wonderful thing to look through the window and be awed by, but it's all the self-check stations scattered around the library.
It's all of the self-check stations, but it is also all of, Lucas has left us, but access services. Each of those workstations for those staff members have the RFID tag machine that creates the RFID tags that then go onto all of the books that make the whole thing work. So it's both ends. So they're at the checkout desks, so it reads the RFID tags when you check out, and the ones in the induction points that check them back in for you. So it's all those same pieces.
So we're really talking about the entire automated materials distribution system.
Yes. Yeah, the only piece that is not in that is the lockers are separate.
So there's a motion on the floor to try to get more information to evaluate the usage of the service contract to make an informed decision about renewal.
Right. All right, so we do not have a second. Do we have a motion for anything else?
So moved.
Second. All right, we have a motion to approve the Biblioteca annual service and maintenance agreement renewal. Since this has a financial capacity, we'll go ahead and.
What you said.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Humphries.
Yes.
Trustee Quintia.
Yes.
Trustee Nienberg.
Nay.
Trustee Slaya.
Yes.
President Gagani.
Yes. All right, the annual service agreement for Biblioteca has been approved. Item B is updates personnel policy, section 3.56, compassionate leave.
So this one, the Family Bereavement Leave Act, Public Act 102-1050, has come into law, and this provides for additional qualifying events under compassionate leave and up to 10 days of unpaid leave as specified in the Act. So this is the update to our personnel policy, section 3.56, compassionate leave, that brings in all of those provisions. That does include beyond death of a member of the employee's immediate family. This also includes stillbirth, miscarriage, unsuccessful reproductive procedures, failed adoption match, or adoption not finalized because it's contested, failed surrogacy agreement, or a diagnosis that negatively impacts pregnancy or fertility. This is Illinois-wide. And it provides for up to 10 days of unpaid leave. Our compassionate leave policy was 5 days of paid leave. So what we have done here is we've continued that 5 days of paid leave and added in an additional 5 days of unpaid leave should the employee choose if they have a qualifying event. There are provisions within that act Also, for additional leave beyond, if there are multiple qualifying events in a 12-month period, it gets a little technical, so we simply refer to the law itself in that case. So in any case, it would be the 5 days that was already in our compassionate leave policy, and then beyond that, to comply with the Family Bereavement Act, the additional unpaid days.
And then this could correlate in some circumstances with FMLA as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Does this apply to full and part-time?
Yes, we do have our compassionate leave policy applies to all staff members.
I will make a motion to approve the updated personnel policy, section 3.56.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the updated personnel policy. Voice vote. All those in favor of approving the update, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? All right, we have approved that update. Item 6 is C, pardon me, item C, strategic planning process.
Okay. So this will be partially discussion and partially approval. Some of this will also be talking about dates and times. So next steps in the strategic plan. First, in sometime in April, mid to late April, we anticipate doing our focus groups. The board will have a focus group that will be just the board and the administration, so that will just be Jen and I. All the other, there will be staff-only focus groups. There will be one for supervisors, and we anticipate at least 2 for non-supervisory staff. And then there will also be public focus groups. We will have half a dozen that will have various targeted audiences, and then 2 open public forums that anybody can come to. So at the moment, we are, the management team is working with the consultants on those audiences. So if there is any, if the board has any suggestions, feel free to make those. We are looking at pretty much your standard ones: parents, community leaders, which would be like the schools, village, etc., our community partners, and the business community, seniors. We're also looking at BIPOC and marginalized groups. We're looking at doing kind of some combined, we were thinking community organizations and our, as well as the village, schools, et cetera, those partners as kind of a combined.
What about religious institutions?
Because we only get half a dozen, we were going to combine, we were going to put the religious institutions in with our community partners. And we will be inviting individuals. So as we get to, once we have those set, we will also be asking you as the board to make suggestions of individuals to be invited, personally invited to those targeted sessions, as well as giving folks the option of coming to one of our open sessions. In addition, we do have our community survey, which actually just opened to the public. There is a strategic planning section on our webpage now under Get Involved. It is dglibrary.org/strategic-planning. And you can find everything strategic planning there, including the link to the survey, which is now live. You will also be seeing it in Discoveries. That newsletter should be getting to homes later this week. It is featured in there with the links for people to give. So we're trying to give as many different ways for the public to give their input as well as you. So we need to set a date and time for your session. And that will be, generally, the focus groups are about an hour each. So that's what we anticipate for that. And then those public forums will also be an open general public forum. We are anticipating that we'll have one in-person public forum that's just an open general, anybody can come, and one virtual, because we're trying to make this as inclusive as possible and reach as many different people as possible. So we're trying to give lots and lots of options. And then the final big piece of the whole strategic planning process is our strategic planning consultant will take all of that information from all of the focus groups and the surveys and all of the information that they have gathered about the library, the statistical comparisons on the regional, national, and local levels, put it all into what they call a findings book, and they will disseminate that to you, to the staff, and to anyone coming to what they call their strategic retreat. And that strategic retreat brings together trustees, staff, and community members in a specific invited group of 15 to 25 individuals who get that and then work on bringing it together into a cohesive whole for the strategic plan. So the other thing that you all need to talk about today is structure and format for that participation. Do you want all 6 of you to attend the strategic retreat? Some boards decide to have just a couple of board members. Some boards decide to have the whole board. Also, what number of staff members and what number of members of the public. And there are, we will be giving, again, this is another area in which we will be asking you for specific individuals who fit various criteria to decide who we should specifically invite. But at this point, what we're talking about is approximately how many, so we can start putting together that list, and when. So the consultant tells us that there are a variety of ways of doing this. There are in-person or virtual, and in-person, you can do it as a full day session. They figure that it takes 6 to 7 hours. So that would be a whole day session. In some cases, they have done it as an afternoon or evening session followed by a morning session. So splitting it up into 2 3 to 4 hour sessions. Or doing it virtually. Now they did a number of these virtually, of course, over the pandemic. During the virtual one, those tend to be shorter and more frequent. So it tends to be 1 to 2 hour sessions, generally consecutive over a number of weeks. So you guys have a bunch of decisions to make, and you don't necessarily have to make them all today. The things that we should really focus on is scheduling for your board focus group, because that's what's going to happen first. So that is mid to late April. And I am making an assumption, that you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we will need this to be outside of a regular board meeting time. It can be virtual if you so choose.
I would love to do it live if at all possible. I know it's difficult with scheduling, but I just don't think you get a nice cohesive discussion as well if virtual.
I agree completely, I think.
A one-day thing where we're really all
Yeah.
going back and forth and getting more acquainted with each other over the process.
Well, the
I think would
focus
be
group
very
is
useful.
the 1 hour just you guys
Yeah.
talking. So that's the first one. It's the
Okay.
1 hour, just you guys and Jen and I talking. So,
Assuming that's subject to all
yes, and it will be subject to OMA. So
Yeah.
we would at least have to have physical quorum in one place.
It would have to be noticed.
Yes, and it will be properly noticed, but it is generally this kind of a meeting. We notice it as a committee of the whole meeting, and generally you don't take public comment or do anything else because you're just there for one topic.
You don't take votes.
And you're not gonna vote on anything, you're all gonna give your opinion and react to the questions that the consultant is asking.
Well, I think the virtual is a fallback if it's absolutely impossible to do it any other way, but I would agree that it should be in person.
So you're looking at April, correct?
Yes.
And it's just 90 minutes, you thought?
They say they usually last 60 minutes, but they like to give an hour and a half just in case we run over.
So it can be an evening or?
Yes. Yeah, so a weekday evening works for that.
So our board meeting in April is the 26th.
Yes.
Yeah, Farnelli mentioned the 19th. Really don't have much on that in April apparently, so that should work just fine.
It would be really hard to make that.
Okay.
The 19th conflicts with another significant library event, I think, doesn't it? Is that the?
You talking about April or May?
April.
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 There's this One Book, One Town thing.
Oh.
It's that week.
Yeah. We make sure we have the calendar up.
Because I think the 19th was chosen for the library program, wasn't it?
That will be a virtual program, question mark?
Are there days of the week we should be staying away from for anyone?
It's gonna be on a daily basis.
Okay.
For me, that's just not my schedule.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for everybody.
We're
But
supposed to have tango classes on Wednesday night. But I don't know if fourth Wednesday. They're laughing, I was serious.
I love it. We do not want you to miss that at all.
We should all write.
No.
Tuesday, the 18th?
You got one in a very specific window of time. Between 6 and 7:30, I can do it on Tuesday, that particular Tuesday, unfortunately. It's very small.
6 to 7:30. Well,
What if we combine it to the same week and do like a Tuesday, we can do a two for library?
Are we talking
Oh,
about
the
the
25th?
25th?
The 25th and 26th.
Oh, never mind, hold on.
Yeah, the equity advisory
Sorry,
team.
I'll withdraw.
We have to do it without
I mean,
you.
Wednesday,
Well, but
Thursday.
the
Do
equity
Wednesday,
advisory
Thursday.
team ends at 7:30. But then you could be here forever.
Come grab dinner with me real quick.
You could do that, I mean, that's fine. I'd rather, if that works for everybody else, the 25th is fine.
Or flip it and do
All right, so
Wednesday.
just say
Doesn't
can't
work.
make the 25th.
And then do we could do Wednesday, Thursday. No.
I can't, it's my daughter's birthday. I was at board meeting
And
last year
this
for her
is why
birthday
we
too.
have such trouble with this.
What about Monday,
What
Wednesday?
if we did an abbreviated meeting on the 26th?
It's kind of hard to tell how much public comment we would have, whether we could abbreviate
Yeah.
it though.
Oh, we got-
How
we got 30
abbreviated
minutes.
we can abbreviate. We can try.
Skinny the agenda down.
Try to
and
get
just
the agenda really small.
Yeah.
Just
Start-
to-
We can start the
Push
meeting at
everything on both ways, and we can look ahead, see what we can move into March.
One Book, One Town is on the 13th, Thursday the 13th.
Oh, it's on Thursday, the 13th.
Yes. But somebody had a problem with the 19th.
Oh,
anyway.
oh,
No, you're going to Tango, don't worry. We're adjusting.
We're not letting you miss.
Priorities. This is now a priority in our life.
We're all ready to get to Tango. All right, I mean,
All right.
I think it's the
Could,
best thing to
is
do.
there any way we could move the regular meeting start time? I know Dave normally has something right beforehand, but it.
On which,
On
Wednesday?
Wednesday, the
Could we
26th.
start at 7, maybe?
I don't usually have a problem on Wednesdays.
Okay.
I mean, a couple of hours before I do, but
Okay.
not.
So like 6:30 or 7?
I can do
I
that.
can do either 6:30 or 7.
We could even go the other way and do the focus group first.
I think we almost have to, so
And
let's
then
work
do the focus group first
That's
and,
true.
and push our regular
Push the
meeting
board.
back to after.
Yeah.
Okay,
So start it.
We already have it.
start at 6:30?
The board meeting needs to be at a specific time.
30 days.
No, we can notice,
that.
we can make the motion to change the regular board meeting time and notice it.
Yeah, but I mean, it has to be a time. If we have the
Yes.
strategic planning set focus group first,
We
Then we
can
have to
set
end.
it for 90 minutes, and then if we end early, we can take
And it just
a
won't-
small recess.
It's-
So like 6 to 7:30?
but there's no danger of it going
Yeah.
past 90.
No, they
Okay.
would,
Anybody
no,
not
they would
start at
cut, they would
5:30?
cut you off at 90 minutes.
Fine.
Did anybody not start at 5:30?
Do we have pizza?
We can bring in dinner. If-
Well, do we
if
need,
that's
okay,
what-
so if we start at 5:30, so it'd be 5:30 to 7 and then a
And then
break
board
and then
meeting?
7:30 or just?
Sure.
That works for me.
I mean, I would imagine they're pretty good about keeping on task and keeping these at 90 minutes.
Are there any limitations to the letter?
We will make sure that this works for them.
Okay.
So that will
This is
be
the
a
only day.
tentative, yeah. So 5:30 to 7 on the 26th with a half-hour break. This is good, this will probably, will be exhausted by the end, but we'll be done.
I was being kind of facetious about the
I
pizza.
still think we should try to maybe skinny that agenda down as much as possible.
Yeah.
And we will still do that. Okay.
Yeah, I will.
So I should-
Yeah, but I can skip it.
We will tell them that you are otherwise occupied. I'll go back for you with the rest of the girls.
I'd like to get a little better understanding of how the groups are being identified. Focus groups. And what's the board's role in signing off on that?
Your role is as involved or not involved as you want it to be. You do have in your packet the focus group guidelines.
Yep. I noticed in the packet it said that it had already, some had already been identified.
We are working
Management team
on a short,
identified 6 audiences for focus groups.
that we are talking to them about. Our 6 audiences are,
I would assume we can have
I
one.
think we have 2 general
Yes.
adult, the parents and caregivers, seniors, we have the community leaders, and then we have the key ethnic group so far.
So far.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we're limited
and
to 6.
for community leaders and community partners, we are looking at doing 2 sessions, one in person and one virtual. Actually, yeah. Sorry, Jen.
That was for the
So-
general adult, I thought.
No.
Oh,
If-
okay.
Do you have I have the latest Google Doc on it.
So when are these focus
so-
groups gonna start?
These will be in mid to late April. In March, we will be, as we finalize these, we will be talking to the board and the staff to identify individuals to be, that fit into these audiences, who will be personally invited by the person who suggests them. We will also be doing things like the parents and caregivers. We will be inviting folks who come to our programs. These will also be advertised in our e-news, on our social media, and on that strategic planning webpage and they will be registration. So people
And have your attention,
will have to
please.
register
The library
for
will be closing in 15 minutes.
so
Please
it
bring the items you wish to check out to the self-checks or the first floor service desk at this time. Again, the library will be closing in 15 minutes. Thank you.
So what are the 6 groups right now?
So it's parents and caregivers.
Is that one?
Yes. Seniors.
Parents and caregivers.
Yes.
Okay.
Seniors.
How are we defining caregivers? What does that mean?
Generally, that
Is that like a catch-all for parents plus anybody caring for kids?
Yes.
Parents.
You have parents,
Nannies.
grandparents, nannies, the aunts and uncles who have custody, that sort of thing. So it's kind of our catch-all there. Senior citizens are community leaders / community partners, and so that would be villages, schools, partner organizations, and villages and businesses, and churches would also be included in that. We are looking at doing one of those in person at lunchtime with food to try to get particularly our business community, and then we are looking at one virtual that may be an early morning or lunchtime as well. And then a general adult in person that will probably be toward the end, that, you know, kind of the catch-all that if you can't make your other session, this is an option. And then we are looking at doing a Black, Indigenous, and persons of color or other marginalized groups.
Can people self-identify for these workshops? So you mentioned there's an invitation process.
There will be personal invitations, but there will also be that general marketing, and so persons who would like to come will also be able to self-identify and register.
So the list of focus groups will appear in the, discoveries?
It will not actually make discoveries because of the timing, but it will be in our e-news and on the webpage and go out in our social media posts. We are also working to try to get it in the village's e-news as well.
Okay, and that'll be in hopefully early March? Because I'm a little nervous about, we're talking about busy people, and I want to give them as much warning as we can.
Yes, well, and this is going to be mid to late April. So we are going to try to, our target is to have these all decided by mid-March and to start advertising them immediately.
At the latest.
Yes, so at this time, we're really working on just, some of our issue is having a place for them because we are waiting to reclaim our program room so that we can actually host these. If we have to push to the very beginning of May, we can do that, but the biggest portion is that findings book, and the consultant needs at least a week between the end of, they need at least 2 weeks between the end of the focus groups and the strategic retreat, because it takes them about a week to get that findings book out, and then they want everyone to have access to the findings book for about a week before the strategic retreat. So it's one of those, a lot of it depends on that timing of the strategic retreat. If we decide to do that more toward the end of May, that gives us another week of latitude for the focus groups. Also, on the student side, middle, elementary, and high school students, we are planning to do mini focus groups in the schools. Erin Linsenmeyer, who is our school liaison, and Amanda Klenk, who is our teen services coordinator, will be setting up tables in the schools where kids will be able to come and answer just like 1 or 2 questions about the library and what they want. This is generally a kind of a pictorial and like voting exercise where they get a couple of dots and there's a whole range of options, you know, do they want, board gaming sessions or, somebody help me out with the.
Video games.
Or more video games, or a, you know, do they want to see more take-home crafts? And so they'll get 2 or 3 dots and they'll have, you know, maybe a dozen options to be able to choose from.
And when are these targeted?
And those will also be happening in at the same time as the focus, that late April, very early May kind of time frame. And so we are working with the consultants on doing that. That is something that they have done with quite a number of the libraries, and it works pretty well.
The consultants have a structure.
Yes, they do.
We have high school students involved.
Yeah, that would be high school, middle school, and they are anticipating maybe 1 or 2 elementary, but the target will really be the high school and middle schools.
And the teachers and administrators would fall into one of those community groups?
Yes. Yeah. The community leaders / community partners would include our school librarians and our superintendents and any of the teachers who would be interested.
I have a question. For religious organizations, are those people who use the library, or religious organizations only in Downers Grove? Because we have people who live in Downers Grove who don't have a religious institution that's here, but that's like one in Westmont or one Lombard, like close by. For example, like a mosque, the closest mosque is in Westmont, the closest temple is in Lamont. So I'm just trying to make sure, like, how are we gonna make sure that we're inclusive of people who live in our community, but maybe the closest place of worship for them is not in our community? Does that make sense? I'm just making sure that when we invite religious leaders, how are we gonna make sure that people are being
That it's
represented?
inclusive
Yes.
of more than, we kind of use that term church by default, but.
Oh, yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
it's not. And even synagogue, like, there's not, I don't think there's a synagogue in Downers Grove, but we have ones very close to Downers Grove, so
Lombard.
yeah, again, Lombard, Westmont are where there are mosques and Hindu temples and synagogues. Just want to
Those
figure
are
out how
kind
do you.
of regional.
Yes, and so when we
Yeah.
say religious leaders, I just want to make sure that we're careful that.
I'm sure if they have representatives in Downers Grove or.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, we need to
Yes.
figure out how this happens to the
And there
representatives.
is a clergy group that gets together, is my understanding, and it was our intention to reach out to them as a collective.
Okay.
I'm not sure how inclusive that group is. So
Okay.
some of this will also be relying on you as the board and our staff to help us flesh out this list. And that's one of the reasons that we talked about this last month with you. We also talked about this last month with the staff, to start thinking about who needs to be on that invitation list. And so we will start putting that invitation list together, and we'll be asking all of you to add to it, and to give us those names and contact information, and, you know, basically what that affiliation is.
Okay, and that'll have to be between now and next meeting.
Yes.
Not, we don't wait till next meeting for that, we email.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Is there anything else we want to discuss? Do we want to talk about the
Retreat?
number of board members at the
Yes,
large retreat?
so,
Okay.
so then we have to get to the strategic retreat. So.
And that's either a full day or 2.5 days,
Yeah, 68 hours.
2 adjacent half days, afternoon and the next morning.
Yes. And generally, the consultant was talking about that this should probably be a weekday. That was one of the kind of, I know
I'm surprised
could
that
be.
they've given us that direction. Why would a Saturday not be in play?
It was not their recommendation. And so you have their strategic plan guidelines, or their strategic retreat guidelines in front of you. This is.
What that means is somebody participating would have to take off from work or not have a job.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please bring the items you wish to check out to the self-checks or the first floor service desk at this time. Again, the library will be closing in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Or
Then that
using
would be
another pair of evenings.
Yeah.
That would be like in May, in early May, or?
Yeah.
Yes,
mid
yes.
to end of May.
Yeah, that would be mid to end of May.
I remember some conversations about things that was sort of, sometimes it's easier to get people, community leaders, and I don't know exactly who we're going to invite to this retreat, but to free up a weekday rather than a family day, which is more weekend.
I don't know, I have to think about all of this.
So
Okay, so.
neither is
So
easy.
what if we run our board focus group play and try to do something like Wednesday, Thursday after hours, like a 6 to 9.
Back-to-back meetings.
We have April 20 or May 24th.
And we can run that by the consultants and see what works for them. I will, so.
That's the last day of school for the high schools,
Ooh.
which is a little awkward.
So, with a 15 to 25 person strategic retreat, goal, kind of target size, with the 6 trustees, I was looking at the idea of about 8 staff members. That would give us 2 supervisory, 2 assistant clerk level, 1 representative of the equity team, 1 from each of our affinity groups, and 1 librarian level staff member. So just kind of trying to wrap my head about who we would put into that. And then that would be about 10 to 12 members of the public, and some of them could be recruited from the focus group process as well. And I was thinking along the lines of representatives of the foundation, the local elected, non-elected officials like the mayor, the village manager, school leaders, teachers or other school staff like our school librarians, business leaders, Chamber 630,
EDC.
Yes, them. Downtown business, and then parents, heavy library users, clergy or lay leaders, nonprofit leaders or staff such as PADS, Hopes for Door, Fish, and our partner organizations like Rotary, EQBG, Downers Grove Junior Women's Club. So that kind of gives us a flavor of the types of individuals that we could
Obviously not all of them.
invite. Yes.
There is one, I don't know if there's much we're gonna do about this, but just something to keep in mind too, when you're talking about elected people participating in this. We have an election right at the beginning of all of this process. If we're talking about positions that are being contested, do we say whoever is coming into office? Do we participate with potential lame ducks on it? We do
I
have
don't think
some.
there's that much space between the election and the swearing in. Like, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fast, but I can't remember what the timing is, you remember?
Oh, it's less than a couple weeks.
Couple weeks.
Yeah.
So but it's still something that we need to be aware of.
Maybe by late May it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but it is definitely something to be aware of,
Yeah.
and also it kind of speaks to the whole having maybe the village manager or the superintendents invited as opposed to maybe the elected officials, because there's more continuity there. A blend is always a good thing, a couple of this, a couple of that.
Well, some of the school people are pretty busy that end of May.
Yes.
High school graduation is the 21st, the last day of District 99 is the 24th. I don't know what the elementary's on, but.
They're not doing June.
We could go the week
The library is now closed. We will reopen tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good evening.
Well, and we can propose, we can bring both of those to our consultants and then get back to you on what works for them as far as, you know, if the 17th, 18th would work as the 2 evenings in a row, or the 24th, 25th.
Yeah, I hate to miss this twice on the Wednesday afternoon thing, but if necessary, I will. I think trying to squeeze a board meeting into a 3 or 4 hour strat planning session on the same evening is a little tight, maybe. A little better for the focus group.
If we could do the week before, I think that might do a little better for us. Plus, with the school thing, we might have better
Yeah, it'd be
attendance.
at least, it might be during final exams or something, but, or just before, but that doesn't affect the administrators as much.
Yeah, APs are always on the first
I don't see anything else here. Sunday is Mother's Day. and it doesn't matter. So we're gonna have to do this by email.
Yeah.
The final selections, right?
Yeah, and we can go, I can take a poll and then report back out to
Yeah,
you on the poll.
There's some tools that
Yes.
polling easy for them. But so the week of the 15th is a front runner at the moment. Right?
Yes, that will be our first pass.
So we need that all done.
Yes.
Yeah. So the findings report would have to be delivered a week prior to that.
Yes. So if the findings report would come to us by the 10th, which would mean we would have to have all of the, everything would have to be done by the end of. The findings report would come out on the 10th, so we would have to have everything done by the 3rd. So basically by the last week
All the focus
of
groups are in
March.
April, is all
Yeah,
that means.
yeah. Yes, by the last week of April.
All right.
It's time to
Okay.
So I guess our homework is to
I'm
start.
going to be on vacation for a little bit of that period of time.
Well,
You weren't
the
gonna be there.
board
Not
members are
everybody
not,
has to.
the board members are not supposed to attend the public focus groups. If you
Okay,
read your
so
focus group packet,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to go, so that's the perfect week for you
I'm
to be gone.
For basically the first 2 weeks in April.
Was a meeting you weren't able to attend? Wasn't there a board meeting that you weren't?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I arranged it around the board meetings. It's not the tango class.
It's not the same. All right, so our homework as trustees is to start thinking about individuals that would be best suited for these
Yes.
6 focus group
And
categories.
Yes. 6 focus group categories, and then if, basically giving the nod to that kind of tentative 6, 8, 10 to 12 for strategic retreat. And we will be working on that invitation list together. So we'll hammer that out as we move forward. But 10 to 12 members of the public, about 8 staff members, and all 6 trustees.
You're going to ask for suggestions from us for potential people for both that group
Yes.
and the focus groups.
Yes.
And so the list of focus groups needs to get nailed down pretty soon.
Yes.
Okay.
That, we are talking about that, finalizing it, we hope, at our next manager.
Okay, and then you can run those by us in case we want to add one or something.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding the strategic planning process? Move on then to item D, third-party investigator for personnel matter. Caitlin.
Okay, so in January, we had provided a couple options for the board to consider, which our initial options were Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, which is our legal firm that we work with, and then HR Source, who we go to with, for certain consulting matters and whatnot. During the executive session, it was decided that we should look more for a third-party investigator that is not related or affiliated with our library at all. So both Jen and I looked into this over the last month and spoke to a couple other firms just to get pricing and to find out if they would be able to take on something such as this. And so after reviewing all of the information that we received, my recommendation would be to go with Ansel Klink, which is a law firm that the library has never utilized before, but they do have experience working with libraries, so they understand, the difference in library culture versus corporate culture, so to speak, and
They do a lot of municipal law.
Yeah, in general municipal law. So, and their pricing was on par with everybody else, and so that would be my recommendation. And they do have the ability to move forward.
Obviously, they do have experience in personnel issues.
Yes.
I would assume.
They explained that they would do the investigation. They would also, depending on what comes of the investigation, recommend, some training for staff and things that we can work on internally as well. And so they would be able to provide resources and recommendations for that on top of just the general investigation, which I thought would be helpful.
They're very good. They were my opposing counsel on more than one occasion. When I was in practice, I did employment law on the other side of the aisle, so it's good selection.
So this is a new contract, so the board has to approve this contract. And do we have the contract, do we have the statement of work?
This
that
is
we're
not
really
a
asking?
contract because it's a professional service, so we don't have to go through the bid process. And because it's an investigation, it will be time and materials. They do not know how, and we discussed this at the last meeting, that this is something that it will take what it takes, and so they charge on the hourly basis.
What's the statement of work look like, or what does the engagement letter look like? What are we asking them specifically to do? What is the scope of the investigation?
We discussed most of that at the executive session last month, which
Yes.
unfortunately.
I don't know how much we can discuss.
Yes, and this is actually why we have an executive session on tonight's agenda. If you want to go into executive session to discuss those specifics of this particular case, you can choose to do that. So you can table this till after executive session.
All right, so we'll go ahead and table
Okay.
this matter to our executive session.
Until, the voting will have
Yes.
to be after.
Somebody has to move and second this table. Right. Yeah.
So I'll
Motion.
move to, table this until after the session.
Okay, and trustee Slavic has seconded, so we will, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and move that to executive session. All right, item number 9 is unfinished business, the bylaws update.
Oh, boy.
All right, so the bylaws are required to be reviewed every 2 years. The last time we did a revision, it was October 28th, 2020 meeting. Obviously, there was, there's a little bit of a lag thanks to COVID and other issues coming up in the previous months that have delayed some things. At that time, there was really no major changes. It was really just a matter of bringing them up to date to fall in line with the Serving Our Public 4.0 checklist. So in terms of office verbiage, removal of office verbiage, kind of just very straightforward cleaning up of them. We had trustees submit some notes on there, ideas and comments. So if everyone has that, I think the best way to kind of go through this.
Question, is the purpose of this discussion to go through the bylaws and make specific changes, or is it, as the agenda suggested, to figure out the best way to move forward?
So
Committee or staff review or whatever?
I would say that the best way to move forward is decide how we do want to move forward. If that is, you know, having an ad hoc committee kind of go through the notes that were submitted after we discuss them today and kind of prepare something for voting. If we want to turn it back to Julie and Jen to kind of do that after we discuss it, open to suggestions.
So this isn't really a choice of final wording and so
Right.
forth, but to zero in on the areas that we...
And the who's gonna do it.
Yeah, and then who's gonna do it.
So is it gonna be an are you gonna give it to staff to do? Are you gonna give it to an ad hoc committee to do? Or are you gonna do it like you do my evaluation, where you guys discuss it as a group and then one person kind of synthesizes it all together? That or any other way of doing it is open to you, but we should.
I don't want staff to throw things at me, but I was thinking that we're going to go through here and come to some consensus about philosophy on some of these things. We want to do this, we don't want to do this one, and things like that. But the actual wording of it requires a lot of thought and law checking and stuff, and I thought that might be better done by staff. And then we would obviously have the final say after they prepared the interim, the draft, if you will. So we would get a final crack at it. But I think having 6 board members trying to choose wording is not a good use of our time.
No, but I do think the board should set the direction.
Yeah.
So maybe, you know, if there are major areas, I read through the notes and the sections, there are, I mean, it's probably feasible to bucket these into 3 or 4 different areas.
Sure.
And maybe there's a committee for each.
That's what we're going to do now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful to kind of know who's going to be taking the lead on it prior to us going into a discussion of each item.
Well, it seems like there's a couple areas that, well, there's a few areas that don't seem, I don't know if we have grand discussion about. It seems like if we say, okay, well, among these comments, go forth and add, you know, a couple of items. There's a couple of sections that just seem pretty straightforward. We can have those incorporated as, you know, as we discussed. But then there's, you know, what, 2 sections at least that then probably do require a more in-depth discussion by some subset of the board.
So those discussions would be OMA, right?
It depends on who and how many. If you wanted to break it up into like smaller sections and have trustees work in pairs, then you wouldn't necessarily, then it wouldn't be subject to OMA. But if you wanted to do an ad hoc committee, that would be subject to OMA and have to have a full and open posted meetings in order to meet, or in order to do that work. So
I don't hate the smaller committee idea. The other option would be we could tack on 30 minutes ahead of the board meetings, the next few board meetings.
You could do a committee of the whole discussion prior to the board meeting to just, you know, and it's harder in this room because of the way we're set up, but, you know, we could actually put it up on the screen and, you know, type through as we're doing. We could, you know, however you guys want to see it. We could even bring you some draft language, at least around what these are, and do that.
The first
For the-
first thing staff could do is the structural cleanup on numbering
Oh,
the
yeah.
sections. That's driving me crazy.
Don't worry, we got you on the numbers. We've got you on the numbers. I promise we'll fix it.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Why don't we, I'll move that between now and the next meeting, we make recommendations to swap on the groupings. So the board submits recommendations to swap on the different bundles of subcommittees that we like. And then we can hopefully reach a consensus on that. And maybe either at the next meeting, or if it's possible between now and the next meeting, schedule some committee meetings.
I would second that.
No, okay. We can talk about it then, right? We can discuss it now. Clarify for me what you mean by groupings.
Well, I think that's somewhat subjective, but if you go through the comments and you go through the sections.
You mean grouping the items in here?
Grouping the
changes.
topics that we want to discuss that will then inform the specific bylaws.
So
That would reorganize the bylaw and get rid of a lot of the redundancy and all at the same time by categorizing the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
The
I'm
items
hearing
to discuss.
things like putting together terms and vacancies and appointments and that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
putting together role of the board and role of the director, and putting
all
together,
the ethics stuff
and
goes in
putting
one
together
place and meetings and public
the meeting, the public comments and agendas and that sort of thing.
And that will require us to kind of go through all these colored bars.
Yes.
And along the line there, we will eventually come to some consensus about what level of detail the bylaws ought to contain.
Yeah.
I mean, there are different philosophies about how much should be in the bylaws. But we'll have to get some consensus on
I have a fair amount of
that.
bylaws experience.
But,
Yeah, there's a tendency sometimes with bylaws to try to cover every little thing you think is gonna come up, and what you're really doing then is policies and procedures, and then you end up against a wall anytime you wanna change something that that's not that big a deal that it violates the
the way I like to
bylaws. You
think of
gotta
it
be
is
careful with it.
the bylaws tell you what you ought to do, not how.
Right, the bylaws are the who. It describes who we are. The policies are more, what gets delivered on a day-to-day basis, and that's
That's
where
the
the
how
staff,
also.
and the procedures are the how. And there's a lot of intermingling in that, and obviously it's not a pure definition.
We wanna
but I
take
think you can get it down to a reasonable length and something that has some flexibility in it and some logical organization.
And are we bound to this list of suggestions?
Oh, no.
There's so much detail in here, time and place of regular meetings.
Well,
There are parts of the ILCS
that
dictate what
dictate
should
that
be in the
you
bylaws.
should have that, so.
In the bylaws?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Some of it.
some of it.
Okay.
But there's a lot of stuff in here that's,
I follow the law.
yeah.
And that's kind of a general guideline, it's the whole, the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is on the fourth Wednesday of every month at 7:30 PM in the library meeting room. However, in practice, we actually schedule, the board annually passes their schedule with whatever changes there are, including changes to your location, such as this one.
But, not all that has to be in the bylaws.
It doesn't have to be in the bylaws.
The board meets monthly.
Yep.
And can have other meetings as needed,
Yeah, thank you.
and the schedule can be changed provided notice procedures are followed, period. You don't need a half a page on when and where and how you meet.
Does the
That's
law
what I-
require
that's
us
what
to
I'm
have
talking
the order
about.
of business in the bylaws?
It does not. As a matter of fact, that it's one of the suggestions, but you don't necessarily have to have it.
The agenda, you mean?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, your order of the
You
agenda.
can
doesn't-
put that an agenda will be posted along with the notice.
Oh, yeah, well, that has to be.
Period, but you don't have to have the agenda in the bylaws.
So I guess my fundamental question goes back to what Marty was saying earlier about what belongs in bylaws and what we should have documented, but that, you know, that we should have some structure around, but that doesn't belong in the bylaws. So I poked around at some of the bylaws that Julie and the staff shared, and I poked around a little bit myself, and I mean, all of them have some very, very bare bones. I mean, it was all of a sudden, we were like, oh, we should add it, there's none of that done. And to your point, I could see that once you start adding more of that detail, you back yourself into a corner.
Exactly.
That being said, we as a board have discussed on multiple occasions, especially in the last 6 months, the need for a little bit more structure, more guidance just for ourselves to know, to understand differently how to work together.
Yeah, the job description part of it is the who, that's
Yeah.
a bylaw that's specific to the board. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just kind of wondering, you know, even if we do, you know, as we moved Bill to say, okay, let's divide up, you know, sections, do all of those sections actually end up back as amendments to the bylaws, or do they end up as something else?
They can end up as something else. If there are things that we feel need to be written down for reference or for posterity or whatever, sometimes a bylaws process also ends up with a policy, mission statement, and a set of procedures.
So it's just see under this.
Yeah, you can reference it, and those are things that then can be changed more easily than the bylaws if the situation changes. I mean, according to these
For example,
bylaws,
the bylaws don't contain the code of conduct and the patron penalties or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are in
Like
the
those,
policy.
you can reference those things in
and
bylaws.
those are one of the areas that we know we needed to look at. So
Yeah.
I think, but this seems like a good way to get started.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to circle back and email me with suggestions on groupings to kind of work together in committees. Is that correct? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And all those abstaining? I keep thinking you're raising your hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All right, so I guess we'll add that to homework for this month. You can just email me and then kind of re-communicate out what the general consensus was, or. All right. We are on to our executive session. Do we have a motion to move into executive session, or perhaps a motion to move D comments up? And library report, yes. I feel like.
Motion to move executive session to the end.
There you go.
Second. All right, so we've got a motion and a second to move the executive session to after trustee comments. All those in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, and anyone abstaining? Okay. And then let's get back to item number 10, library director's report.
All right, I'm going to try to be very quick. The salary structure re-benchmarking project, we have received the preliminary report and structure, and it is trended forward to January 1st of 2024 for implementation. So we've got that preliminary report. We'll be able to, Jen and I will be reviewing that, and then eventually that will come to you all, and it will help us kick off the budget process for 2024. I know, we're already talking about that. The annual report is also in the discoveries issue that will be coming out this week. It's a doozy, so have a look. You know, we are at more than 1 million circs again this year. Just incredible numbers as far as programming and participation, and it's just really, it shows why we're a 5-star library. We There is a report attached to my librarian's report, the FOIA legal invoices that was questioned last month, showing, and it shows that there were over $15,000 in FOIA request legal bills related to drag queen bingo. We also have, let's see, the Legacy Wall exhibit may be coming to Downers Grove in June. EQDG is working to do that. If you don't know about the Legacy Wall or the Legacy Walk in Chicago, go to legacyprojectchicago.org to learn more. That would be an exhibit like the other museum exhibits we have up on the second floor. As I noted in your report, there were 8 incident reports in January. There have been 11 incident reports so far in February, 2 of which were things that did not happen on library property, that were simply things that were reported to us or questioned. So we were just tracking those, and 2 of which were just incidents to be documented, other happenings in the library. And 4 of those incidents were disruptive teens. Apparently spring has sprung a little early in Downers Grove.
There were 2 incidents documented that didn't happen on library property before?
Yes, a couple of teens reported to library staff something that happened over by Cocomero. They did not. They did contact their parents as well, but they did not want to contact police or pursue it any further. They just wanted to tell a responsible adult what happened. So we made a note. And the other one was actually something that happened out in the parking lot, and a police officer came in to ask us some questions. So things happen and we write them down. Also, just going back to the statement that went out yesterday, as of 4 o'clock today, we had received a total of 90 responses to that, both on the feedback form and independent emails and other responses. 74 of those were in support, that's 82%. 12 of those were in opposition, that's 13%. And 4, which was 4%, were just other.
Thank you for that.
Quick question. There was a reference in public comments to a racial healing event that was canceled by police?
It was not canceled by police, it was canceled by the presenter.
Okay. And what was the reason for the cancellation?
The presenter did not feel safe.
Because of?
It was like a week after, 2 weeks after the drag queen bingo.
Oh, so it was just the aura of.
Yes.
Okay.
That was probably largely timing. It was just right on the heels of all the rest of that. Things were still kind of churning.
Yes, yeah. It was scheduled for October.
Yeah, right after that.
Yeah, it was right in that same time frame.
Questions for Julie? Julie, how long does the Legacy Wall stay if it comes? Is it a month or is it?
That will depend on what EQDG is able to do. They are working on the funding for that. Generally, the exhibits that we host are paid for by outside partners or by grants, and so this is like that.
It costs multi-thousands of dollars to bring the Legacy Wall to the library, set it up, everything like that, transportation, and I mean, it gets close to 5 figures in some cases. And the EQDG group is raising those funds. And depends on how much they raise, how long it'll be here.
That's the end of our library director's report. We are at trustee comments.
I wanted to share an experience. I went to the coffee with the social workers within last month. I was curious about it, and as a new trustee, I thought I'd check it out. It was a really nice experience. I not only met them and saw them working with some library users on some issues, and they were terrific with them, including one unhoused person. And that was that Saturday. We had that terrible ice storm. I mean, it was awful out, and people were looking for shelter and all kinds of things. So I talked to them. I talked to a couple of patrons. You have your hand up, or are you just resting?
I'm sorry, it's throbbing, it's throbbing,
I'm just
it needs
surprised.
to
Well,
be
see,
up,
you've
sorry.
been talking with your hand despite all of that tonight. And there were some other library patrons around who knew I was a trustee, so of course, I got into a couple of other conversations along the way also, which was nice. I was really glad I did it. I felt good about the direction that we were going with the social workers available for those people. They really were able to help most of them in some way or another. And it triggered an idea in me too, since I was talking to other patrons and to some of the people who had come for services who wanted to talk to a trustee. It's something we might want to consider. They do it with the city council. They do it with the library staff. We might want to consider something where there's a little less formal opportunity for people to interact with us too.
We've done that a little bit over at the train station during the summer. Some of us help with the display over there and get involved in conversations.
Yeah, trustees have been outreach
At the farmer's
volunteers
market.
with us over the summers.
Yeah, which is great. But it was just a really neat experience. I just did it for the heck of it, as the newbie.
I have a couple of quick comments. I should thank you for including the FOIA reporting, kind of accounting of all that. I think, just out of curiosity, it's good to kind of see how that was breaking down and coming in. I just loved the circulations department's goal setting thing that they included in their department report. I don't know, for some reason I just always really loved their reporting and
All that data.
It's just exciting. I really appreciated the report about the free menstrual products being offered in the women's restroom. I saw it today, and I was like, oh, it's there already. That's great. I just read about this. That's a really exciting opportunity, and so I'm really glad that we took that on. And then I wanted to mention I've also partook in a library program, the Great Decisions conversations that have started back up again. I had to attend virtually, unfortunately, because I was at work that day, but it was really great to hear community members coming together and talking in a really respectful way about potentially really contentious topics. And so I was really impressed by the facilitator and impressed by the program. I'd never participated in it before, and it was a good experience. So I'm going to try to do, hopefully, in-person ones going forward. So, thank you.
You going on the table or just jumping in?
I want to say, Caitlin, 600 individual little security permissions. That's amazing. Kudos to you.
It's amazing I don't have a brace on mine.
But yeah, I loved hearing more about access services. I feel like that definitely is one of those things that we're like, what do they do? And it was one, and even if you know and you like Google it, you still are, because I think I Googled it when I was first a trustee. It's neat just to hear how much work that very tiny department does is amazing, and they physically involved in every aspect was really great. So, and I also noticed the menstrual products, and I thought that was amazing. And last note was the 12-page discovery report, just to see how much we're doing and how many opportunities our library is providing for our community. It's just, I always say that I'm so proud of us, but I'm really proud of it all. It's really, really, really amazing.
I just wanted to thank Swapna for the work she did on putting the composite bylaw document together.
It was a wild Saturday night.
I heard the word pride a lot tonight, or proud a lot tonight, and I want to speaking as an individual person, not for the board, but that I'm very proud of the statement that was released yesterday. And it is a statement, if you haven't read it, I hope you will. It is addressed to the community, and that community includes all of us. It includes the library customers, it includes the library staff, as well as the community of Downers Grove and beyond, because we serve many people that aren't in Downers Grove. So, forgive me, but I just want to read part of the last line on this thing. It helps me really be very proud to be associated with a library that considers this kind of values. We encourage all community members to remember the humanity in all of us and to treat ourselves and one another with kindness, dignity, and empathy. That makes me very proud.
All done? Dave, I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you to Allison Brunel. I had an opportunity last Friday to meet with representatives from the Downers Grove Junior Women's Club, who presented us with a check for $5,000 to add accessibility kits to the children's department. And what they actually said was, thank you, Allison, for bringing attention to this need. She, is like Jen, a grant master, looks, very proactive staff to go into the community and seek funding and present ideas. And one of the women in the juniors said, you know what, my son could benefit from this stuff. So I think it's very important that we recognize the fact that our staff is going above and beyond and really making sure that we do in fact serve, everyone, not just children that want to play with games, but children that really need these devices that are probably out of the reach for many because of the financial impact. And I also wanted to thank the library for releasing the statement yesterday. As a parent to two children, seeing the news and having to sometimes turn off the news because it's so difficult to watch it with them in the room. I think it's a reminder that their mental health, my mental health is kind of constantly something that I think about, and having not only a powerful statement, but one loaded with resources and rich with resources is extremely important. And like everything else in the library, it's a resource if you need it, not because we're dictating that everyone needs it or should use it. And unfortunately, as much as I would like to think I live in a bubble, we don't. And whether these things happen in California or my niece's school today was involved in an intruder a few suburbs down from us. So things like this can happen, and violence and shootings and things are all around us, whether or not we want to acknowledge it. So thank you again to the library for that statement. So, any other trustee comments? All right, we have our executive session for last. Do we have a motion? And a second?
Yes.
All those in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye. All those opposed? We're moving back into regular session at 10:07.
I think that's a great idea.
All right, do we have a motion for our executive session?
Let's reconvene. I move to reconvene.
Oh,
Second.
yes.
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. We're reconvened at 10:07. All right, now do we have a motion for executive session discussion?
Okay.
Should I try it?
Or you. I move that we circulate an outline of what our expectation is from Ansel Blank in this investigation, so that they can give us a more detailed proposal on how to meet our expectations.
As well as provide them with
And
the
we
employee
will
name.
provide the employee names so
For
that
them
they
to
can do their
cross-check.
conflict check.
Yeah,
Second.
perfect. We have a motion and a second.
I think we should amend that motion and also authorize the library to give a status to the employee, give a status update, just let the employee know what's going on.
That we're moving forward on it.
Yeah, so I'll
That's a
move
good
to amend
idea.
the-
Well, you can just adjust the motion, can't you?
Yeah.
If you accept that,
So
I accept it.
amended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Caitlin, did you get
We're,
that?
you-
The recording.
yeah, just,
No, I got it. All right, so we have a motion and a second and an amended motion on the floor. All those in agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining?
it's not really an amended motion.
Right.
Okay.
Pending a little more information.
Okay.
You're not gonna need to do PT tomorrow, you've done enough tonight.
All right, last item is adjournment. It is now 10:09, and I will adjourn this meeting.